the wooden beams of the Whitley County Horse Barn groaned softly under the weight of rain and tension. It was auction day, a long-anticipated event in this small Kentucky town where horse breeding wasn't just business, it was bloodline and pride. Among the well-worn stalls and bales of straw, murmurs filled the air. The prized mare, Etta May, a broad-chested bay with a proud gait and gentle eyes, had unexpectedly gone into labor moments before bidding was set to begin. Her delivery wasn't scheduled for another 2 weeks. The timing couldn't have been worse, or more unforgettable. The barn vet, Dr. Linwood Pierce, a quiet man in his late 50s known for his steady hands and aversion to drama, stood by the stall, watching the birth unfold. He'd seen hundreds of foalings, most routine, some tragic. But as the newborn slid onto the fresh white sheet, wet and still, a silence unlike any Linwood had ever felt fell over the entire barn. People crowded at the stall's rails, phones ready, breaths held, but no one spoke. Etta May, panting and sweating, turned her head slowly toward her newborn. Linwood stepped in, his boots crunching on the straw, and froze. What lay before him wasn't just unusual. It was wrong. The foal's limbs were contorted, its head shape slightly off. And worst of all, something no camera could truly capture, was the eerie stillness of the creature, as if it were thinking before even breathing. Linwood dropped to one knee, his mouth dry, heart racing. His hands hovered, unsure whether to intervene or flee. He was a man of science. But this made no sense. Etta May let out a low, mournful whinny. The foal twitched. Gasps rippled through the bystanders. A woman whispered a prayer. A man turned away. One of the handlers, a wiry young guy named Mare, muttered, "That thing don't look right, document." Linwood didn't respond. He couldn't. The foal's eyes had opened, and they weren't cloudy like a newborn's should be. They were deep, clear, and unsettlingly human-like. And when they locked onto his, Linwood felt something stir. Not fear. Something older. Something buried. Just then, the barn's intercom cracked. Next up, Etta May and her foal. Linwood stood suddenly. "No," he rasped. "You can't auction them. You don't understand." He was cut off by a sound behind him. The foal had moved, tried to stand. Its legs wobbled as it rose, unnaturally fast. And in that moment, everyone in the barn knew, this wasn't just another birth. It was the beginning of something terrifying. The foal stood, trembling on uncertain legs, but with a determination that seemed beyond instinct. Its joints cracked as it straightened, the wet sheen on its coat glistening under the stall's dim light. Etta May, though clearly weak, nudged it forward with her nose, as if encouraging the impossible. Around them, the crowd had fallen into a stunned silence, the kind of hush that follows something unexplainable. Phones were still held in the air, but now fewer were recording. Most had lowered their hands, too unsettled to continue watching. Dr. Linwood Pierce couldn't take his eyes off the foal. There was something unnatural about its balance, not just how fast it stood, but how it looked directly at each face in the barn, one by one, as if it knew it was being watched. "That's not reflex," Linwood muttered under his breath. "That's awareness." Merrick, the stable hand, stood frozen near the stall door, visibly shaken. "Doc, you saw its eyes, didn't you?" Linwood didn't answer. His mind was racing through every medical explanation, but none fit what he had just witnessed. The auctioneer's voice crackled again over the loudspeaker, more urgent this time. "If the mare and foal are not moved within 5 minutes, we'll move on." Linwood turned sharply, walking briskly toward the front of the barn. "Shut it down," he said to the auction manager, Delora Briggs, a no-nonsense woman who'd been running auctions here for 20 years. "This foal's not fit for sale." "Something's wrong." Delora raised an eyebrow. "Wrong how?" Linwood hesitated, searching for words that didn't make him sound insane. "It's not natural. I need more time." Back in the stall, Etta May circled her foal protectively. The newborn had begun to pace in small, cautious steps, its hooves clumsy but strangely deliberate. Several people began whispering again. A man from Ohio muttered, "That thing's cursed. It ain't right. Seen a colt born like that once, didn't live past 3 days." Others weren't so quick to leave. Curiosity had replaced fear in some of their expressions, and that curiosity was dangerous. People didn't just want to understand anymore. They wanted answers. Linwood returned to the stall and crouched low. The foal approached him, slowly, unafraid. Up close, he saw more than deformity. There was a mark on the foal's chest, dark, misshapen, almost like a burn. Linwood reached out, and the foal didn't flinch. When his fingers brushed the mark, the foal let out a sudden, sharp breath, almost like a sigh. Then it happened again, the hum. That low, vibrating sound that didn't belong in any animal's throat. This time, it echoed through the barn rafters, and a light bulb overhead shattered into darkness. After the light bulb burst, a low gasp swept through the barn. Someone dropped their phone, and it hit the straw-covered floor with a dull thud. Etta May reared slightly, startled, but the foal remained still, composed. The strange hum faded into silence. Linwood stood, wiping his hands on his coat, heart pounding. He couldn't look away from the dark mark on the foal's chest. It wasn't a natural birthmark. It had texture, rough and slightly raised, like old scar tissue. But there was more. It resembled something. He had seen it before. Not in a medical book. Not in the field. But in a dream, no, a memory, from long ago. Linwood blinked hard, as if trying to shake it off. He could still picture the dusty barn from his childhood, his father standing tall, yelling at the young Linwood to leave the stall. There'd been a birth. A malformed foal. A scream. Then silence. His father never spoke of it again. That memory had haunted him for decades, until now. Delora approached, clearly rattled but holding herself together. "Linwood, you need to tell me what's going on. People are spooked. We've got buyers walking out." Linwood took a breath. "Delora, have you ever seen a foal hum like a human child?" She raised an eyebrow. "Hum? What are you talking about?" Linwood hesitated. "There's something ancient in that sound. It's not pain. It's communication." She laughed nervously, but her eyes darted toward the stall. "You're scaring me, document." Meanwhile, Mare stood near the barn's entry doors, refusing to come any closer. "I ain't going near that thing again," he said to no one in particular. "It looked right at me, like it knew my name." A few other handlers nodded silently. Linwood realized something. It wasn't just his imagination. Others felt it too. An energy, a presence, something far too intelligent for a newborn animal. Suddenly, the foal let out another soft breath and collapsed back to the ground, curling itself into the same position it had been born in. Etta May didn't panic. Instead, she lay down beside it, pressing her body close as if sheltering it from the world. Linwood rushed in, checking its vitals, heart still strong, breathing steady. It wasn't dying. It was resting. But the timing of the collapse, the dramatic rise and fall, felt deliberate. As Linwood knelt beside the two, a voice behind him spoke in a low, gravelly tone. "You need to call someone." He turned to see Brenner Cobb, a former breeder with a weathered face and secrets in his eyes. "This ain't the first time something like this has happened," he said quietly. "And if I were you, Doc, I'd start digging into your own past." Brenner Cobb's voice had the weight of gravel and old regret. Linwood turned slowly to face him, still crouched by the foal and Etta May. The man hadn't stepped foot on this property in over 15 years. Most of the younger staff only knew him by stories. Some called him a recluse, Others whispered about the tragedies tied to his breeding farm. But Linwood remembered him differently. Not fondly, not with trust, but as someone who'd once walked away from horses and never gave a reason why. "What do you mean, this isn't the first time?" Linwood asked, standing. Brenner didn't respond right away. His eyes were fixed on the foal, now quietly sleeping beside its mother, both of them bathed in the soft glow of the overhead lights, all except the one that had shattered earlier. "That mark," Brenner finally said, pointing toward the foal's chest, "I've seen it before. 40 years ago. On my father's farm. The night my brother died." The barn fell still again, as if his words carried the weight to silence even the animals. Linwood felt his skin crawl. He didn't believe in superstition, but something in Brenner's voice wasn't just memory, it was fear. "That mark came with a sound," Brenner continued, "a hum that shook the rafters. Just like tonight." Linwood's stomach tightened. "What happened to the foal?" he asked. Brenner took a slow breath. "It lived 3 days. By the 4th, the mare was gone. And so was the boy." Delora Briggs had joined them by now, standing close but saying nothing. Merrick lingered near the door, unwilling to come back inside. Linwood felt the eyes of the auction-goers still watching from the far side of the barn, behind the wooden bars. Their murmurs had quieted, but the tension hung in the air like smoke. "So what are you saying?" Linwood asked. "That this is cursed? Haunted?" Brenner shook his head. "I'm saying it's connected. These births don't happen by accident. They happen in cycles. Every few decades. Always here in Kentucky. Always with that mark." Linwood wanted to dismiss him, to return to the safety of science and reason. But his memory, that repressed image of a night in his own childhood, clawed its way forward. A foal. A scream. A light that shattered just before dawn. His father's cold warning, "You never speak of this again, Lynn." And now, after all these years, here it was again. The same mark. The same hum. The same stare in the eyes of a creature too young to know the world. Suddenly, from the corner of the barn, a young girl's voice pierced the silence. "It's awake again," she said, pointing. Everyone turned. The foal was no longer curled up. It was standing, tall, silent, and staring straight at Brenner Cobb. The foal didn't move. It just stared, unmoving, unblinking, at Brenner Cobb as if it recognized him. And for a long, chilling moment, Brenner didn't move either. He stood stiff, shoulders tense, lips slightly parted. Linwood watched him closely. The older man's eyes had gone glassy. "It's not possible," Brenner whispered, voice low, cracking. "That look, those eyes. I saw them once before. And I buried them." The air inside the barn had grown heavy. Etta May didn't react to the foal's sudden alertness. She stayed resting on her side, as if trusting her child completely. But Linwood noticed something else. The foal wasn't just standing, it was bracing, like it was preparing for something. Its legs were still shaky, but its posture held an unnatural stillness. "Everyone step back," Linwood said carefully, waving his hand toward Delora and the others. "Give it space." Brenner didn't move. His gaze remained locked. "My brother, Seth, he had a connection with the foal that was born that night. Swore he could hear it thinking. Said it talked to him in dreams. The day before he vanished, he said the foal had shown him something, a field with no end, full of fire and shadows. My father thought he was losing his mind." His voice cracked. But maybe he wasn't. Linwood felt a knot in his throat. He turned to Delora. "Get these people out of here. This barn needs to be cleared. Now." She didn't argue. Her instincts had been screaming since the light shattered. She stepped away and began ushering the few spectators still clinging to curiosity. But not all obeyed. Some lingered behind the gates, pretending to leave while secretly filming through the slats. What they didn't realize was, this wasn't something you watched. This was something that watched you back. The foal tilted its head slowly, almost human in the motion, and then took one uneven step toward Brenner. The old man flinched, stepping backward for the first time. "No," he muttered. "No, I buried you." Linwood turned sharply. "What did you say?" Brenner looked wild now, panic rising. That mark, it wasn't just on the foal. It was on my brother's chest. After he disappeared, my father found him. Cold. Lifeless. With that exact burn, right above the heart. Before Linwood could process it, the foal opened its mouth. Not to whinny, but to let out that same low, humming sound. Only this time, it was louder. Vibrating. Almost choral. And as the rafters trembled, Brenner dropped to his knees, hands over his ears, eyes wide in terror. "It's calling something," he cried. "God help us, it's not alone." Dr. Linwood Pierce stood frozen as Brenner Cobb knelt trembling on the straw-covered floor. The hum that echoed from the foal had faded, but the feeling it left behind lingered like smoke after a fire. Thick, heavy, unnatural. The foal, now once again silent, returned to Etta May's side, curling beside her as if nothing had happened. But Linwood knew, something had shifted. Something ancient. Something real. He crouched beside Brenner, placing a firm hand on the man's shoulder. "Tell me everything," he said, voice low. "Start from the beginning." Brenner didn't answer at first. His hands were shaking. The year was 1983. We had a mare just like this one, looked the same, even acted the same. She gave birth early, just like tonight. The foal had the same eyes, the same mark. My brother. He was drawn to it, couldn't stay away. Then one morning, we found his journal in the barn. Pages filled with drawings of symbols we didn't recognize. Circles. Spirals. Names that weren't ours. Linwood's breath caught. "You still have it?" Brenner nodded slowly. "I kept it hidden. All these years." Linwood stood quickly. "Bring it to me. Tonight." Brenner hesitated, but finally gave a weak nod. As he rose to his feet, Delora reappeared by the stall gate. "Most of the crowd's cleared out," she said. "Couple of stragglers filming from the fence line, but I'll deal with them." Her eyes flicked toward the foal. "It's calm again." Linwood nodded. "Too calm." He turned to Merrick, who had cautiously crept back in after the hum ended. "Keep watch. Don't let anyone near them. And don't touch the foal under any circumstance." Merrick swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." His voice was hoarse. He didn't want to be near that thing. But orders were orders. As he settled by the corner of the stall, Linwood turned to leave, but paused. Something shimmered beneath the straw where the foal had stood earlier. He knelt and brushed the straw aside. His fingers met the edge of something hard. Wood. A piece of paneling from the floor had been forced loose. Underneath, tucked into the dirt, was a small, aged leather pouch. He opened it slowly. Inside were brittle, folded pages. Handwritten. Yellowed with time. And right on the top page, a mark. The same as on the foal's chest. Linwood stared, pulse racing. These weren't Brenner's papers. They were older. Much older. His eyes scanned the scrawled name at the bottom. Jedediah Pierce. His grandfather. Linwood sat alone in the barn office, the door locked behind him. The smell of leather and old hay filled the small space, mixing with the scent of dust rising from the aged pages he had just unfolded. The name, Jedediah Pierce, stared back at him in faded ink. His grandfather had died before Linwood was born, a name only spoken at awkward family reunions, always followed by long silences and quick glances between relatives. Linwood had always assumed he was a farmer, nothing more. But now, the evidence in his hands said otherwise. The notebook wasn't just a journal. It was a ledger, names, dates, symbols. On one page, an illustration of a mare eerily similar to Etta May, with annotations about breeding cycles, gestation periods, and an entry titled The Returning Blood. Another page detailed strange behavioral notes about foals born during specific lunar phases, most of them marked with the same dark shape found on the newborn in stall 12. Linwood's heart pounded as he turned the pages. The writing shifted over time, more erratic, more emotional. At one point, Jedediah had written in capital letters, "The foals are not mistakes. They are messages." Outside, the wind picked up, whistling softly through the barn rafters. The old building creaked like it was remembering something, too. Linwood leaned closer to the last page in the pouch. It was barely legible, but he could make out a sentence. "It always begins with the mare, but it ends with the bloodline." Linwood sat back in the chair, his mind reeling. What had his grandfather known? And why had no one ever told him? A soft knock at the door snapped him from his thoughts. It was Merrick. "Doc," he whispered through the crack, "you need to come see this." Linwood stuffed the papers into a satchel and stepped into the hallway. Merrick's face was pale. The foal. It did something. They walked quickly through the dim corridor toward the stall. "What kind of something?" Linwood asked. It touched Etta May's chest. Just pressed its head there. And when it did, she passed out cold. When they reached stall 12, Etta May was lying on her side, unmoving but breathing. The foal stood beside her, wide awake, eyes glowing faintly in the dim barn light. Linwood felt a weight in his chest. This wasn't illness. It was intention. He remembered the final words on that last page, and suddenly they didn't feel metaphorical anymore. The foal wasn't born to live. It was born to awaken something buried deep in his blood. Linwood stood beside the stall, his eyes locked on the foal. Its coat had dried fully now, revealing a sleek, dark sheen that almost shimmered under the barn lights. Etta May remained unconscious, but her breathing was slow and steady. The foal hadn't left her side since she collapsed, except to take a single step toward Linwood when he approached, as if it were waiting for him, acknowledging him. The weight of the ledger in his satchel pressed against his ribs like a stone. He reached out, slowly, palm up. The foal didn't flinch. Instead, it tilted its head slightly and blinked, a slow, deliberate motion that felt unsettlingly human. "What are you?" Linwood whispered. A voice behind him spoke softly. "It's not what. It's who." Brenner had returned, standing in the shadowed entrance of the barn. He held something wrapped in cloth. "I brought my brother's journal," he said. "You're going to want to see this." Back in the office, Linwood and Brenner sat across from one another while Delora stood silently near the door. Brenner unwrapped the cloth, revealing a weathered notebook covered in old stains and deep creases. Inside were pages filled with childlike drawings, spindly creatures, figures with long legs and hollow eyes. But in the center of nearly every page, the mark, always on the chest, sometimes on humans, sometimes on animals. In one chilling sketch, a boy stood beside a foal with the words, "I hear it singing," written over and over. "This isn't just a pattern," Linwood muttered. "It's generational. Passed down." Brenner nodded. "And it's always tied to one family line. Mine, and now yours." Linwood's throat tightened. "Why mine?" Brenner pointed to the edge of one page, where two names were scribbled together in faded ink. Seth Cobb plus J. Pierce. Linwood blinked. "My grandfather knew your brother?" Brenner's expression darkened. "They didn't just know each other. They were part of it." "Part of what?" Delora finally asked. Her voice was calm but edged with dread. Brenner looked down. A pact, made generations ago, with something they didn't understand. They thought it was about power, breeding the perfect bloodline. But it wasn't. He looked up at Linwood. It was about listening, and carrying it forward. As Linwood processed the weight of this truth, the barn lights flickered. A low vibration rolled through the ground beneath them, subtle but unmistakable. Linwood looked toward stall 12. The foal was no longer inside, and the stall door stood wide open. The stall door swung gently on its hinges, creaking in rhythm with the wind. Linwood's breath caught as he stepped inside and found it empty. Etta May was still there, slowly stirring back to consciousness, but the foal, the one that had somehow drawn out memories buried for generations, was gone. "Mare," he called out. No answer. The barn felt too quiet now, like something had drained the life out of it. He turned to Brenner, panic rising. It couldn't have gone far. They split up immediately, with Delora checking the surveillance footage while Linwood and Brenner followed the trail. Muddy hoofprints leading out the side door of the barn and into the thick woods behind the property. The moon hung low, casting silver through the trees. As they moved deeper into the brush, Linwood felt something he hadn't felt since childhood, dread that wrapped itself around his spine. "Where does this lead?" he asked. Brenner hesitated. Ashwood Hollow. The name landed like a weight in Linwood's chest. His grandfather had written about that place in the final pages of the ledger, a clearing surrounded by dead trees, where the first listening had occurred. It wasn't just folklore. It was real. And it was where the pact had been made. As they pushed through the thicket, a strange silence fell around them. No insects, no wind, just the sound of their boots against wet leaves and the faint hum. That same haunting hum. Closer now. They found the foal standing in the hollow, its eyes glowing faintly under the moonlight. But it wasn't alone. Mare was there too, kneeling. Frozen. Tears streaked his face as he stared at the foal, whispering something under his breath. Linwood approached carefully. "Mare." The young man turned slowly, his voice fragile. "It showed me my mother. She was singing. I didn't know she ever sang." His face crumpled. "It wasn't evil, document. It just knows things." The foal turned its head to Linwood and took a single step forward. The humming grew louder, and Linwood felt it, not in his ears, but deep in his chest. It wasn't a sound. It was a call, a pull, an invitation. Brenner stepped back. "This is it," he said. "This is what our families were bound to. We're not just caretakers. We're conduits. And you," he looked at Linwood, "you're the one it's been waiting for." And then the foal bowed its head, not in submission, but in acknowledgement, like it remembered who he was before he ever did. Linwood stepped into the hollow, drawn by something deeper than logic or fear. The foal stood in the center, perfectly still, its dark coat glowing subtly under the moonlight. The hum had faded, replaced by a silence so thick it felt alive. Mare remained kneeling behind him, quiet tears still falling. Brenner stayed at the edge, unwilling or unable to come any closer. For Linwood, it was different. Each step toward the foal felt like walking into his own memory. He stopped just a few feet away. The foal looked up, and in that moment, Linwood understood. This creature wasn't here to harm. It wasn't here to be feared. It was a messenger, a bridge between blood and time. He remembered a line from Jedediah's journal, "Those who listen will remember what was forgotten." And Linwood listened, not with his ears, but with his very being. And the memories came, not just his own, but his grandfather's and those before him. He saw Jedediah standing in this same hollow, a much younger man, holding a newborn foal in his arms, crying not from fear, but from awe. He saw the pact, not a dark agreement, but a vow to protect, to receive. These foals didn't come from darkness. They came from a place between where memory and emotion become form. Their births were rare, sacred. But something had gone wrong along the way. Greed, secrecy, silence. It had twisted the truth into myth. The foal stepped closer and pressed its head gently against Linwood's chest. His breath caught. He didn't move. Images flooded his mind. His childhood barn, his father's silence, the pain of unanswered questions. And then, a warmth. Forgiveness. Understanding. The burden his family had carried for generations wasn't a curse. It was a calling. Behind him, Brenner wept quietly, understanding too late what his brother had tried to protect. Linwood knelt before the foal, hand resting over the mark on its chest. "I remember," he whispered. The wind stirred. The dead trees around the hollow rustled for the first time in decades. And just like that, the foal turned, calmly walked back through the trees, and disappeared into the dark. Not running. Not afraid. Just finished. Linwood remained there long after it had gone. For the first time in his life, he felt whole. The mystery was no longer a weight, but a truth he could carry. As the dawn broke over Ashwood Hollow, painting the sky in pale gold, Linwood knew exactly what he needed to do. He would protect the bloodline, and this time he would not do it in silence.